Okay, well, welcome to our webinar. My name is Seth Early, and today we're going to be presenting with Harmony and talking about conquering content chaos and how we can demystify our taxonomies. Demystify taxonomies in SharePoint. Lots of organizations have deployed SharePoint, but of course the problem is that they don't necessarily think about taxonomy. They think about it as an afterthought. They bolt it on at the end, and many times we have a big mess. Or they don't leverage any taxonomy at all. And of course, SharePoint 2010 and SharePoint 2013 have tremendous capabilities. So there's a lot that we can do to improve findability. We're going to talk about that today. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. The webinar is going to be 60 minutes. You can submit questions via the chat box, the text box on your screen. If you need help, you can email sharon@early.com. And be sure to fill out the survey that will be in your inbox and let us know what you'd like to hear about in the future. We're going to be providing the slides and the recording in a couple of days. You can also follow Early and Associates at Early Taxonomy. You can follow Harmony at Team Harmony. I'm at Seth Early. I should have put that up there. And the hashtags today are taxonomy and SharePoint. So today's agenda is really going to be about why you can't find things, especially when you're looking at large repositories of documents, and then how we can start to fix that, how we can address that, how we can look at approaches for developing and applying taxonomies both at the department and the enterprise level. We're going to go through a real example of a SharePoint site that was a little bit messy and how we clean that up. And then we're going to talk about how we can actually get to this end state, SharePoint nirvana, content management bliss. And really we're going to be showing you how to overcome many of the challenges when it comes to tagging of content, right? We can build great taxonomies, we can build great content models, but if we don't have a mechanism to make it easy for the users to put terminology into the system, then our efforts have been wasted. So today we're going to hear, again, my name is Seth Early. I'm CEO of Early & Associates. Many of you may be familiar with our organization. If you want to learn more, you can go to our website. We're going to hear from Yaakov Cohen, who's the CEO of Harmony, and David Lavenda, who's the VP of Product Strategy for Harmony. And I'll just give you a quick background. I've known about Harmony for many years, and it was really one of my favorite applications. So I'm really excited to be able to do this session with Yaakov and David. So I'm going to turn it over to Yaakov, who's going to begin the process and talk a little bit about content chaos.
Yes, thank you very much, Seth. Thank you for this introduction, and welcome to everybody. We have a very large attendance today. More than 200 people joined from many places, many enterprises, and it looks like this is a subject which is very common as I talk to customers, to SharePoint organizations. A lot are talking about SharePoint becoming a document graveyard, and people are dropping documents onto SharePoint, but then very quickly nobody can find documents, and there is no real life cycle management of projects which are happening on SharePoint, and we end up with a lot of documents but nothing really findable. And this has a big business implication. So beyond the fact that there is frustration among business users which are coming to IT and complaining and saying, I can't find anything, beyond just this overall frustration, which is making IT look bad, this is also some very concrete dollar implications, as you can see from this IDC research, which really has unveiled what we all know. One, a lot of the enterprise knowledge is captured in unstructured content, such as documents, rather than in structured repository like a CRM system or a HR system or ERP system. So documents are really key for the organization, and when we don't have the ability to very easily find information, we are losing revenue. For example, in order to reuse knowledge, to reuse documents, to reuse sales practices, best practices, engineering practices, so we lose efficiency and an ability to move quickly. And we also are becoming less efficient. This can be also when you do a record management initiative, the ability to discover the information needed to answer a lawsuit, for example, is very important, fundamental to the whole process, and this can incur significant costs. So really this is a very important topic, and the fact that we have so many attendees today just is another confirmation that this is something everybody care about. So what I would like to do now is to invite all this group which has joined us today online to tell us about their enterprise taxonomy today. Do you have an enterprise taxonomy in place today? So we have seen that the vast majority didn't yet put in place a taxonomy. And one of the obstacles is as you getting into trying to define a taxonomy. So here is what happened in these meetings. You can probably recognize your taxonomy meetings. They look a little bit like somewhat political meetings with a lot of opinions. It takes a lot of time to define the information architecture. And when you don't have a structured methodology to come up with a taxonomy, it becomes a political battle to try to define, what are the most important terms and what is the right classification methodology. It can end up becoming kind of a political battle. So one of the things we want to look at today is we have early associates have a lot of experience in this field, and they have developed a structured methodology which is really cutting through politics. The other point, as we have seen that we have a lot of folks, even within the folks which have a taxonomy in place, we have seen that 18% have a taxonomy in place, and still 10% overall have one but didn't succeed to get it implemented. So that's about, if I count reasonably well, it's about 60%. So the majority of the ones which have a taxonomy in place are actually suffering from resistance from user, because what happened is through this, when you get something designed by a committee, you end up having something very cumbersome. A lot of compromises are being made, and you may have 25 required fields in order to file a document. So then, the user has been forgotten from the equation, the ease of use has been ignored, and as a result, a lot of the taxonomy, even if you are passing the first obstacle of the politics, you end up failing in the next one, which is user resistance. So this is really a via de la rosa, and at some point, you need a better strategy in order to be successful. So that brings us to our second poll. We have 86% people which are facing somewhat of a resistance or a clear resistance from their user about taxonomy. So there is definitely 86% which are facing some sort of resistance. So how do we get to the SharePoint bliss? So let's try to define it plus. That looks like a great vacation, and all of us are pretty soon will be on vacation. So let's describe our ideal vacation, our ideal SharePoint bliss. So it's a place, it's when SharePoint becomes really a knowledge center. It's easy to locate documents, it's easy to upload and add content, even to comply to the taxonomy, to add the metadata, to add the required properties, and it becomes easy to share knowledge. So this is really the state we want to achieve. This is where we want to be, maybe not during our vacation, but as we come back from our vacation, we want to make sure that we turn our SharePoint from a document graveyard into a knowledge center, into a real enterprise repository for record management and for sharing knowledge and getting the enterprise to the next level of collaboration. And that's what we're going to really drill down into now. And how to achieve that, the SharePoint Bliss, is by combining the best practices in defining the right taxonomy. As we have seen that the majority of the people here are lacking a taxonomy, and that's what Seth early will take you guys through. And then I will take you guys through how to make this taxonomy implementable and successfully adopted by your users. So please, Seth.
Terrific. Thank you, Yakov. And I know that there are some folks talking a little bit about standards and resistance to standards and talking about interpretation of taxonomy and so on. So we'll get to a little bit of that. I do want to mention that, again, I'll do a little bit of a plug here for Harmony. It is a great application. It's something that we used for many years, and really I thought it was a terrific way to get users to take the burden off of users when it comes to adding terminology and tagging content. But first we're going to talk about taxonomy. What is taxonomy? Well, taxonomy really starts off as a collection of concepts and ideas, right? It's not necessarily just the terms in a term store. It's not just necessarily a navigation. It's really talking about the things that you deal with in the business on a day-to-day basis. If you think of a concept, we're a consulting firm. If you think about a concept like methodology, well, what is a methodology? If I translated that into the SharePoint world, I could actually have a site collection called about all kinds of methodologies. I could also have a site which could be about methodologies, or I could have a library which could be about methodologies, or I could have a content type which would be methodologies, or I could have a field value, a column within a content type which could be called methodology, or I could have a term that I could tag something with methodology, right? So methodology is a concept. And then what we do is we translate those. So when we go into an organization, we say, what are all the things you deal with? What do you interact with? How do you, what do you work with on a day-to-day basis? And you actually can ask this of people on a department-by-department level. But people will talk about things that are concepts. They'll talk about things that are processes. They'll talk about content. And then that has to be organized, right? So we start off with this collection of concepts, and then we organize them. Then we translate those concepts into the design elements. We say, okay, this makes sense at this level, or this term makes sense as something we're going to tag with. So again, it's a system for organizing information. It's a collection of concepts, usually in a hierarchy, so it's a parent-child, full-part type of relationship. That's the simple definition of taxonomy. We're not going to go into very deep definitions of taxonomy. We actually have courses that go on for days to talk about the details, but start off with that idea. And then why does that, or how does it improve findability? Well, first of all, I like to say if you can't name it, you can't find it, right? Especially when it comes to non-text assets like images. So digital asset management especially needs this, but even when we talk about content like text documents or PowerPoint presentations or Excel sheets or PDFs, we still need to name those things. We can do something with the content. We can index it with a search engine, but many times what you find is the search engine is very broad, right? It pulls back too many results. But what we do with taxonomy is we at least get people using the same language. They're using the same terminology around content and around processes, and it's just getting people to say, this is a statement of work. It's not a proposal. It's an SOW. What is it? This is what this is how we define it. So, or this is what we define as a solution, or this is what we define as a methodology. Getting people to use things consistently, and every organization goes through this. And once we get the consistent terminology and we agree on what the official terms are, we can start to apply that to information to improve search recall, to improve search precision. Precision says, give me the stuff that I want, right? Exactly what I want. Recall says, don't miss anything, And then precision says, well, out of all of that content, give me precisely what I want, right? But we can improve both. We also can improve usability of applications. That's really important, and everybody says, make it user-friendly. But having a consistent terminology means that we can improve the learnability of an application, because it takes time to learn how to use different systems. So taxonomy increases usability, but sometimes we have to train people. Sometimes people need to spend time learning something. If you learn it in one area, you can go to another area and it'll be easier to learn. Improving consistency of messaging and information. Many organizations are transforming all their processes to digital, and they need to have different devices and different channels and different mechanisms for communicating with people, and all of that needs to be consistent. And really, we want to improve our processes and efficiency and reduce the friction from the rework, right? When people can't find things, they redo it. If we have the incorrect version of a document or a spreadsheet, we'll use out-of-date information. Or if we have inconsistent structures, then we either can't do roll-ups or we can't do integrations. There's all sorts of inefficiencies caused by inconsistent information. So there's a lot of things that we can do. And of course, when we do this at the enterprise level, we can improve the communication with partners. We can improve it with customers. We can reduce that duplication and that rework. We can speed up all these processes. We can create new efficiencies. I like to say it speeds up the information metabolism of the organization. Everybody can make better and faster decisions. So what does it do? Again, it brings this to all these different types of systems. So content management, enterprise search, records management, rights management, digital asset management, portals, and so on. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but that's when you start implementing this, you get to that level. Very, very quickly, we don't have a lot of time for this, but I'm just going to talk about the methodology, because taxonomy by itself is not valuable until you put it into the context of information architecture. And that is that process that I mentioned before, where we take the concepts and we convert them into design elements and documents. And this is a typical type of a process where you're looking at strategy. Where are we going? What are we doing today? Somebody asked the question, should you start off with an assessment of taxonomy? Absolutely. It's a good place to know where you have problems. But how is this going to help us solve business problems? What's that future state? Then we need to understand the audience. We need to understand our content. We need to understand the things that people are trying to do. Then we can start designing things. And you see taxonomy development here. That's actually the term piece of it. But again, all of this fits in the context of information architecture, right? Taxonomy is one component, but we have to integrate it into all overall information architecture. And we want to test. We want to validate. We want to make sure the taxonomy is well structured. We can look at it by itself, but we also want to look at it in the context of the user interface. We want to make sure we can tag with the taxonomy. We want to make sure that if we're going to use an auto-categorization tool, we can leverage it appropriately. And of course, there's a big picture of governance and change management and socialization. So again, this is, when I talk about taxonomy, I'm talking about driving a much larger process around information architecture. So when we start off beginning with the user, we want to identify who they are. We want to understand what they're trying to accomplish and what content they need. So here's an example. Marketing people need to locate analyst reports for sales presentations. Or another one, salespeople need to locate presentations on a particular topic, on mobile or another area, or master data, or mobile development. And what we do is we bring people in a room, or you can do this online, and you brainstorm. You say, well, what are all the things that you interact with? You can do this with the salespeople. You can do it with the marketing people. You can do it across departments. You can do it online. We did this online, and we started to say, tell us about collateral. Tell me about case studies. Tell me about the features that you're working with and the product types and what types of information you're getting from analysts and what your campaigns consist of. And this is just a brainstorm, right? This is just beginning that process. We need to understand what people are trying to do within a particular context. So we want to say, all right, if I have a piece of content, well, how do I describe that content? What is that thing? If I printed it out and handed it to somebody, what would I call it? I would say, here is your what, right? Here is your white paper, here's your analyst report, here's your methodology, here's your sales campaign, whatever it is. And then we have to say, what is it about? What is the aboutness, right? If I had 1,000 pieces of content in a pile, how would I tell them apart, right? That's isness and aboutness. This becomes the input for the content architecture. And again, all of this starts from a taxonomy perspective, because the taxonomy are the concepts that then get organized into isness and aboutness. Now, the next piece of it, I could say magic happens here, right? We go from that diagram I showed you, this one on the right, and then we start to say, okay, what does this really mean? We need to start organizing. We need to start thinking about how the isness and aboutness can be structured so that I can build out my design elements. And that's really the part where the rubber meets the road. This is where we start to build our architecture so that we can apply taxonomy to our content. So taxonomy can be many different things. It can be a navigation structure. It can be a content structure, right? It can be terminology that gets plugged into a piece of content, right? It can be processes. Again, it's a system of organizing concepts of information. Now, when you start doing this, again, we start from the bottom up. We say, how do I interact with this information? And then I have to do it across multiple departments, right? I have to do group by group and user group, stakeholder group by stakeholder group, department by department. Then we need to say, all right, how does this fit in across the enterprise? So this can be a time-consuming process, right? Now, I'm going to show you this in just 1 minute, but this is where we started. We had this set of documents, and there were tons of folders, folder overdose, analyst projects and research and awards and blog posting campaigns and collateral and communities and company meetings and conferences. And what we can see here is that people just start using folders for everything. What we want to do is we want to instead start organizing this. We start building out the content model and start organizing this into other design elements. In this case, I built libraries. I said, well, let's take analyst reports, separate those out as a library. Let's build campaigns as a library. Let's build case studies as a library, and then we'll have a separate library for collateral. And then what you start to see is I then did other things here. I said, so here's a collateral type of data sheet. And then I say, well, how would I actually tag that? What's it about, right? This is the isness. The isness is a data sheet. Whoops. The aboutness is this feature, which is single screen. The aboutness is the product. The aboutness is the solution or the topic. Those are all the areas of aboutness. Again, we have multiple. It is only one thing, but it can be about many things, right? Then here's another one on campaigns. And then I have the ability to start organizing this and saying, well, I want to see all of this by my campaign type or my campaign component. Or I want to look at my case study by customer. Right? So I start to say that I can take these items and I can start breaking them out by status, by solution, by product type, by template, by customer, by analyst, and so on. So that's where we start to do this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you where we started with this one. And this is one of the document shared libraries that we showed you this screenshot of. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a search for Gartner Magic Quadrant and mobile. And what you see here is I get a lot of results here that are, I could go through. I see a bunch of things that say mobile, a Magic Quadrant, but what's the right one? And I actually have 93 results. Now, what I can do is I can go into an updated version of this. What we did was we created a sales resource site, and we broke this up into analyst reports, campaigns, case studies, and collateral. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to search on this site. And what I'll do is I'll now pick up many fewer results. I see I only have 4, but you know what? I still am not sure which the right one is, which one is correct. So now I'm going to go into the library, and I can see that, oh, here are my analyst reports. Well, you know what? I can do a couple of things. I can do my search again, or I could say, you know what? I just want the ones that are published. Again, this is more metadata. Oh, wow, and look at that. I have 1. Or I could have done it another way. I could have said, you know what, let's go in and I want to see it by analyst. right? So now I see, oh, here's all the Gartner. I have 2 Gartner ones. Oh, one's expired, one's published. There's the one that I want. So it's very, very easy. And then I could say, well, I want to look at these according to, or sort according to analyst organization, or sort or filter according to product or solution or topic, and so on. And when you start to go into some of these, you start to see that I have metadata that I can view, and I can show you that we have these properties. This is the content model. Again, there's the status, it's expired. There's the title. I could put in the document owner. There's the plan. There's the solution. There's the topic. There's the feature, and there's the analyst organization. So again, those are the ways we can, and I can go into all of that with each of these, but that's all I have time to show you. But this is an example of significantly improving the process by simply adding structure. Sharon, do you want to go ahead and turn this over? Now we're going to see this from the perspective of Harmony and on a mobile device. So we're going to hear from David, who is going to show us the rest of this demo.
Thank you, Seth. That was a very nice demo to start, showing us the Salesforce, the SharePoint view of the taxonomy before and after. What I'm going to show you now briefly is how you can see the same information as part of your regular workflow in your email and also on mobile devices. And that's going to be a short demonstration of how Harmony fulfills the user experience component that you talked about being so important as part of the taxonomy projects. Because no matter how great a job you do to define and classify and define the information, if you can't get people to upload the documents and classify them correctly, of course you won't be able to fulfill the requirements of the project, and you won't be able to find anything later on. So let me show you how we make this really simple for you to do right here in the places where you spend your regular workday. So what you see in front of you is an Outlook window, and it's a standard Outlook window. On the right side of the screen, you'll see on the right side is the Harmony window. This is your view into SharePoint directly from your desktop. So you'll see the same at the top. I'm looking at the marketing folder that Seth showed us in the browser before. And I can do the same type of searches. So if I'm looking for that, I'm that marketer who's looking for the Gartner Magic Quadrant report in SharePoint, I get that same endless list of documents. There's no way I would be able to figure out what I'm looking for here. This was before the taxonomy project. When I go to look at the after, once the taxonomy project was completed and the classifications were done, and I repeat that same search, you'll see very simply, exactly as Seth showed, I get a very concise list of the documents because these have been classified, and now I'm able to view those documents right here on my desktop directly with an email. So I could, of course, drag and drop these documents between email messages and automatically uploading them to SharePoint and vice versa, adding them to email messages as links or attachments. And as Seth showed, now as I go into the analyst reports, you can see that I have a view that shows me the documents by analyst organization. I can also look at by solutions. I have different views by which make it very easy for me to find what it is I'm looking at and to browse those documents which are the ones that I'm looking for. And as of course, when I look at these documents here, you can see that all the metadata that was displayed as part of the browser is now also available here. So I can see the solution type, the topic. But this is more than just viewing. I right-click, and now I can open the properties. I can do all the data editing, the metadata editing right here. In fact, you can see the two fields, name and description, which are signified by a red dot, mean that these are required properties. If I were to try to upload a document to SharePoint directly from Harmony, I would be required to specify these, or else I would not be able to check these in. And I'll show you that very briefly on the mobile device. So Very easy user experience. Really doesn't require any training because it's right here on my desktop, and a lot of the simple drag and drop and the search directly from the window. So I'm that marketer. I found that document very quickly right here on through my Outlook window. Now let's take a look at the second use case, where in this case I'm a salesman who's out on the road, and I am now accessing Harmony through my iPad. So you'll see that here, and I can also see the same marketing folders, including you also see the not only documents, but I also have the ability to see SharePoint lists and edit those lists directly from here. But I'm now in this situation, the salesman, I'm looking for something else. I'm not looking for that analyst report. What I'm looking for is a sales presentation that talks about mobile device management, MDM. And I know we had something like that, but I've got so many sales presentations, I just don't have time to start digging through all of them. So what I want to do is I'm going to look through and find out, look, the ones that are tagged as MDM. So I just click that menu, and I enter MDM, and I'll see that one of the tags that's been defined is MDM, as a solution. And when I select that, SharePoint Harmony filters the SharePoint repository and finds there's a presentation right here. This Harmony mobile sales presentation is the one that I need to work with. Now, when I click on this document, not only can I open the document, display the document, edit the document, share the document with colleagues again as a link directly. So if I click right here at the bottom, I can send this document as a link through email or send it as an attachment. But I also have full capabilities to not only view the same metadata that we had seen on the desktop, but also through the menu at the top here, I can also edit the properties. So now I can also edit the properties. So for example, I see here that this particular presentation mentions a number of different products. And when I click on that list of products, I get all the list of products that are defined. And now I want to add this one, Android, and add that as a product to add that to classification of the metadata. So it's very simple, full read-write access to the metadata directly from the mobile device. And of course, being able to view and edit it as well. One other thing I want to show you quickly is, as I said before, one of the most important things about the day-to-day use following a taxonomy project is the usability. So if we don't get people to upload and correctly classify documents, they won't be able to be searched later on or be found, and the whole project really kind of goes up in smoke. So one of the things I'm going to show you very easily is I'm starting from my email folder, and I've received a PowerPoint presentation in email, and I'm going to I click on the presentation itself. Now I can open this in Harmony, and when I open it in Harmony, I can say, okay, it's asking me to save this. Do I want to upload the document into SharePoint? And yes, I do. And I want to save it here in this space. I could, of course, navigate, but I want to save it here. And while the document's getting uploaded, you'll see in just a moment that because there's required metadata, you'll see at the top there are two fields. There's the name and the description. And because there's required metadata, I cannot check this document in until I fulfill the requirement of specifying the required field. So for descriptions are right here, great, presentation. And of course, I could also specify some of the other fields that we had already seen that Seth described before. So I can also say that this is the collateral type here. This is a presentation. Further, by classifying it and saving the document, the document is now uploaded. It's checked in. I can check it in now and add some comments. Once it's checked in, it's fully available for everybody else on SharePoint to view and use this document. So there's no easier way to get this uploaded, to get files uploaded into SharePoint with the required metadata, making this super easy for people to do, whether it's on the desktop or whether it's on the go through mobile devices such as the iPad or even smartphones, iOS, Android, BlackBerry, Windows phones, all are supported through the same interface. So that concludes my demo. I think with that I'll turn it back over to Sharon to follow up with the questions.
Great, thank you, David. We have a couple of questions that the people had posted, and I'm going to answer a couple of them. So we did define taxonomy. I'm hoping that provided a reasonable description for what taxonomy is. Again, it's a system for organizing information, parent-child whole part relationship. We can organize web content, we can organize documents, we can organize any type of unstructured data, but it also gets applied to structured data. Many times we call that a master data management, part of a master data management project. One of the other questions is how do you do a taxonomy audit or assessment? Is that a good pre-step to putting a taxonomy in place? That was David Calloway who asked that question. The other question was by somebody in Missouri. So it was somebody in Missouri want to know that. I didn't see the full name. So David Calloway, yes, there's lots of ways to do the assessments, and there's about a 30-point assessment heuristic that we use to understand taxonomies, but there's also understanding how well the taxonomy is meeting the needs of the user. So you can look at the structure, you can look at the balance, you can look at the granularity, the specificity, any ambiguous terms, but then you need to see how well can we apply this to content, to search, to findability, and so on. So there's a bunch of ways to do that, and yes, you look at different taxonomies across different systems, and then you compare them in terms of quality, and then you look at the capabilities you're trying to build, and you can do a gap analysis and then a remediation program from there. I see another comment here. Resistance is more about aligning to industry standards to be able to take advantage of package and plugin solutions. I think that's probably partially true. I think it's a matter of when you're doing a taxonomy project, you're doing an internal standards project, right? That's what this is. It's getting people to standardize on terminology. So that's a big problem, getting people to understand this and then apply it. Let's see. There's one that says the happy medium makes sense. Though with that, should folksonomies be considered? Should we avoid them or embrace them in the enterprise? And that's a really great question. We actually have a lot of different materials and studies on folksonomies. You can actually use both. You will never depend entirely on a folksonomy. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's unstructured tagging. It's what a lot of organizations do. They let anybody tag anything with anything. And there are problems with that because there's a lot of misspelling, there's redundancy, there's ambiguity, there's personal organizing principles, there's a lot of things that you're trying to get rid of when you develop taxonomy. However, in SharePoint, you have the ability to enter enterprise keywords. Those are the folksonomy. And the first thing it does is it says, is this already in the taxonomy? If so, we're going to use that term. If not, then we're going to add it. So that at least makes it a little bit easier. But there's a lot of, you can also use folksonomies to inform the taxonomy, and many times people use a hybrid where they clean up some of that. We could talk more about that, but I don't think we have time for that. Oops, sorry. I think I accidentally made Sharon the presenter. Oh, Sharon, you're going to that one. All right. The other question that we had here is, let me just pull this up. Sorry, it got undocked here. The other question we have is, what do you recommend for an enterprise with diverse people and diverse communities? Love the collaboration possibility of SharePoint, but we're challenged to implement consistent terminology. This is always going to be the problem. You know, we did a project for Ford Foundation. Lots of different communities, lots of different diverse terminology. It's the same process, right? Every organization has enormous diversity. So you can do this. You should reach out to some folks at Ford Foundation. I can put you in touch with them, and they can show you how they did it. But it absolutely can work. Don't most industries already have a standard taxonomy for agriculture, engineering, and so on? Yes and no. But the problem is that many times the taxonomies are overly granular, right? They try to cover everything. I saw one once for oil and gas, and it included under fuel lamp oil and peat. Lamp oil and peat. Yes, those are valid fuels, but I don't see why you'd have those terms in your taxonomy. So you could always use those as a as a starting point, or you can use them to make sure you have complete coverage. I'm just going to finish up a couple of these questions really quickly, and then maybe we can open it up to some of the Harmony specific questions. Why use different libraries instead of pure metadata? And this person was saying that library seems to be the replication of the folder structure. Yes and no. Libraries are used when we want to have a natural grouping of content or content types. We use different content types when we have different structures of the information, and then we can think of library as another organizing principle, right? It is a bit of inherent metadata. If I put everything in, if I put analyst reports in there, I'm classifying them as analyst reports. I'm actually using an analyst report content type. So there's no pure right or wrong answer. You don't want to go library crazy, but it's not replicating folders. It's just another organizing principle. Let's see. I think there are a couple of pieces here that I'll let the Harmony folks talk about. We did use content types. Somebody asked if we use content types. Absolutely. Again, don't have time to get into all the details of the content model, but yes, we did use content types. Okay, I have a couple of them that I want to pass over for the Harmony folks. Let's see. How did you get SharePoint information to show up in email? So that's the Harmony actual plugin. David, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah. Yes. So thank you, Seth. So yes, it's a Harmony client is an Outlook plugin, and you can download a free version of it at the Harmony website, and you basically just install it, and it appears as a plugin in your Outlook window.
Another question is, are lists available in Harmony for Outlook? Look, I don't know if that's an appropriate question. Is that that's a good question. That'll be supported in Q3 this year. That's in development right now. Terrific. And another question, is there a way to upload multiple documents with that process?
So on the desktop, yes. On the mobile, at the moment, it's one by one.
Okay. Let's see. And what about adding classifications? Can you use logic to choose among the range of values to best populate all existing documents? Yes, in a couple of questions. So yes, absolutely, you can do that. What you may have seen or may have noticed in my presentation when I had the my screen up, and I'll go ahead and share this really quickly. Sharon, if you want to just give me permission, is I have a view for tagging, and you can see when I go into this view for tagging, now I have the ability to go in and make changes to multiple documents. So I can highlight those documents, and then I can choose from values within the term store, and then I can replace those values if I would like. So if those are all branding, I could say OK, and then I could replace those or add those and so on. So yes, the answer to that is yes, certainly in SharePoint. How about in Harmony? Do you want to talk about that, David?
So the logic is typically from a product standpoint, Harmony is really the user experience for SharePoint. So the logic, the definition of those types of things, the administrative functions are really not within the purview of the Harmony interface. But we do have many customers who have that set up so that the typical business user who uploads documents and have required metadata defined, a lot of that can be defined by logic or by default values, so that only the minimum number of specified values have to be done by the user, which of course increases.
Also, David, if I may add, also we have customers Harmony has offers an SDK on the Outlook side, which enable you to customize what happens when you drag and drop and upload a document on SharePoint. So some of our customers are using this SDK to fill up require properties based on, for example, the document title, or if it's an email, it can be the email sender. So we actually can automatically insert logic, which we fill up the properties by using the Harmony SDK. And we have multiple customers which have done that. Typically, they do that together with us. we define the requirements and we work together to implement them.
Terrific. Thank you, Yaakov. Another Harmony question. Can a Harmony, and then I'll get back to some taxonomy questions as well. Can the Harmony IE window work with a system like the Records Center? I don't see any reason why it wouldn't.
Yes, Harmony supports SharePoint Record Center. And you will see within Harmony when a document has been defined as a record, but the actual act of defining a document as a record is only available through the browser interface. I wanted also to mention, Seth, as you should be able to see on your screen, we are offering, Harmony and Early Associates are offering a free 1-hour workshop. Maybe, Sharon, you want to show that? So you can go simply to the...
Yeah, Yaakov, let's finish up the questions first, if we could, and then we'll talk about the workshop. So again, this is, and we can talk about it briefly, but I'll show you. I was going to answer another question here, but yes, this is the workshop that Yaakov had mentioned. So go ahead, and I want to finish that up, and we'll go back to the questions in just a minute.
Yeah, just you can have a free 1-hour consultation to help you define a comprehensive strategy, which will include the user experience and information architecture. So you have the URL there that you can reach to.
And I will add the disclaimer to that. Typically, to do a comprehensive taxonomy strategy for a large enterprise can be a 6-month project. So you're going to get an hour's worth in this. So just make sure you temper your expectations. so it can be anywhere up to that. That's probably on the high side, but those can take some time. There's another question here about pre-populating. And the question is, are tags automatically suggested when something is entered? And you can see here, I typed in B, and it's saying branding or BYOD. So yes, the answer to that is yes. There's a question on Harmony. I can connect to an anonymous site from Harmony on my iPad, but not my desktop. That sounds like a support question, so maybe you guys can take that offline. Any suggestions for applying taxonomy to legacy documents stored in SharePoint? That's a great question. And I think the challenge, of course, with legacy content is how much do you go through? How much effort do you want to go through to do that? And you really have to do a content audit, and then you can apply auto-categorization to that. There's a lot of different strategies for that, but that's a more in-depth question. We have a client that's migrating 15 terabytes to a new SharePoint implementation, and that's a huge issue. But there's lots of approaches for that. There's tools and there's methodologies. Let's see. Thank you for the clear, concise explanation of taxonomy. What if you're forced to comply with a different taxonomy within the organization that differs from the user's vocabulary? Great question. There are always going to be those challenges with application of terminology and differences across the organization. In some cases, you can have multiple, well, you always can have multiple taxonomies. In some cases, you can respect what the user does by mapping that to other terminology. In other cases, you just have to say, this is the way we're going to do it, right? So it really depends. You want to have some higher level of control when things have a broader span of reach across the organization. If it's a global publishing site that's going to, everybody's going to see, well, yes, then you need to comply with the standards. If it is something that's just for that individual in their department or their collaboration group or their own personal, let them do what they want. So there's a continuum of structure. The analogy I make is you can let people mess up their desk, but don't go into the open area in the lobby of the organization and leave your papers, right? Don't mess everything up there. Let's see, what else? 5,000 document limit in the library. Should you only have 5,000 documents in the library? That's more of a technical question. There's no limit on a library, but I think there's some technical constraints around views. Does anybody on the Harmony side want to answer that question? It's a little bit off the Harmony topic, but any constraints that you want to speak to?
I remember an earlier limitation on, maybe it was an earlier version of SharePoint, which had a 5,000 documents limit. So I think today, at least with 2013, this has been solved. And in any case, Harmony doesn't change anything in your SharePoint installation. So both in terms of security settings, both in terms of any limitation that you would have on views with SharePoint, for example, they will be reflected also in Harmony because we are just activating SharePoint through the web interface rather than through the browser.
Terrific. Terrific. Thank you. There's a couple of other questions here. Suggestions to help people get away from creating folders and explore a view blocked in the web UI rather than using existing site columns. Well, you know, that's a compliance issue, and I think it really depends on governance, and you do need to have feedback mechanisms. And there's always this challenge of how tightly do you control things. But that's a good question. I haven't seen clear ways of dealing with that. How can you manage taxonomy between SharePoint and Salesforce? Wow, great question. Patty Ankle. Hi, Patty. You know, there's a lot of interesting connections you can make. Now, SharePoint is not, the term store is not a taxonomy management tool. And there are APIs to get taxonomies in and out. It's not easy, but you can use the APIs to move terminology. That's a great example of something that definitely needs to have integration between Salesforce and SharePoint. And I'd love to talk more with you offline about that, Patty. But I think that you know, whenever you're looking at taxonomy management, the term store is not a taxonomy management tool. It is a term store. There's a lot of other things that you want to do when you're talking about an enterprise view of taxonomies. It's specific to SharePoint. Does a great job with SharePoint, but you need more than that. Let's see. To use the taxonomy to manage metadata. Yes, and more. Remember, taxonomy, the lowest level value within a taxonomy could be the terms themselves, but taxonomy represents things conceptually. It can also be navigation structures. It can also be library structures. You can look at views from a taxonomy. Everything is a hierarchy, right? You can break everything in SharePoint down to a hierarchy. So it is one massive taxonomy from site collections to sites to libraries to lists to content types to columns to term values, right? And so that's the hierarchy. And when you look at terms in the term store, that's one of those levels. But you want to apply them in other areas. But I did pull from the managed metadata store. Let's see. Using SharePoint 2010, it's awkward to use. How does taxonomy management software mesh with SharePoint and Harmony? Well, that's a good question, but you know, I think it's a little bit beyond the scope today, and we're down to the last couple of minutes. We can certainly share the Q&A question. Somebody's asking that. Can you use taxonomy to allow restricting access to documents based on tagging? Yes, you could. You could drive security in that way. What are the engagement roles of Early and Associates in Harmony? Who takes the lead? It really depends on the nature and scope of the project. If it's you're looking for product sale, you can certainly go directly to Harmony. If you're looking for consulting, you can start with Early, or we can have a joint call and discuss your needs together. Let's see. Harmony plugin only available for Outlook, or is there a desktop plugin or available for Windows Explorer? I think there's a lot of platforms that you can leverage within the Harmony environment. Let's see. Boy, this is a good question. If I set taxonomy to be able to send feedback, would that be available in Harmony? David, do you want to answer that question? Did you hear that, David?
Can you say again the question, please, Ted?
This is, if I set taxonomy to be able to send feedback, would that be available in Harmony as well? Could you have feedback on the taxonomy? I don't know that. We could take that offline. We'll get back to you on that. Let's see. Do you find greater adoption rates for SharePoint capabilities with integrated with Outlook and mobile? What's the tipping point?
Yes, that's an Harmony question. So we definitely have seen a significant uptake in adoption for organization using Harmony. Typically, we can, it depends, obviously it depends also on how you kicking off the SharePoint initiative, but when we work closely with our customers, we're able to achieve about 3x adoption over a period of about 12 to 18 months.
Great. Yeah, there's huge, huge improvements in adoption when you just make it easy for people to put in the metadata. We are at the top of the hour, so I do want to let people go, be respectful of their time. I know we blasted through those questions, but we had a lot of really great questions, and very rich webinar. Please take us up on this consultation. Again, I would have phrased it a little differently. I can't promise a full taxonomy strategy and user experience and information architecture in 1 hour. If I could, then I'd probably be doing something else. But anyway, listen, thanks everybody.